Hey VC, here's Matt again on a Sunday. I did a video earlier this morning on Misfits by the Kinks in my series of reviewing all the Kinks albums in order. I want to do another video. This one has to do with Paul McCartney, not the Kinks. Wanted to do this. This is an album that I've heard about for years and never seen a copy of other than pictures in Beatle books and so forth. And I've wanted it forever, and I finally got a copy of it last week. And it's an album that you don't hear much about, even though it's Beatle related. So, The Family Way, original soundtrack with music by Paul McCartney. This is the first Beatles solo album ever. A lot of people credit Wonderwall music by George Harrison from 1968. This came out actually January of 1967 for a movie that came out in late 1966, being The Family Way. So I wanted this forever. I didn't have expectations for it at all. I've always kind of uh, grouped this with those things like Electronic Sounds or Life with the Lions, Two Virgins, the Wedding album, those odd kind of curiosity albums that the Beatles made early on that are just not very listenable, and I didn't think this would be weird, crazy, unlistable stuff like Electronic Sound or Life with the Lions. I thought it would probably be just kind of pleasant, nice music, sort of thing you'd listen to once out of curiosity, put away, and probably never play again. You might drag it out every 10 years or so and just to hear it, but not something that you would play very often. I was kind of surprised though. It exceeded my expectations. I really wanted this just as a filler to have it, kind of a completist when it comes to the Beatles, and I had wanted this forever. First off, the movie stars Hayley Mills, and John Mills is in it as her father, and then it stars a bunch of people that I've never heard of. It was a British-made film, so Marjorie Rhodes, Hywell Bennett, Avril Angers, Liz Fraser, Wilfred Pickles, it's a good name, Barry Foster. So I don't know who they are, but anyway, I don't know, anyone that's kind of my age or older might remember the days back before we had cable TV and satellite TV and DVDs and Netflix and all that, when you only had your TV station had your TV had like 7, 8 stations where you lived. And where I lived in Fort Worth, we grew up. We had Channel 11, which was showed the old reruns of, I don't know, the Flintstones and Popeye and Gilligan's Island, Leave It to Beaver, and all that sort of stuff. But in the middle of the day, they had actually they had something called Cartoon Carnival at noon that showed Bugs Bunny and that sort of thing. But after that, they had a movie every day. One of the old movies used to be called Dialing for Dollars, because at every commercial break, some guy would come on and he would call somebody in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and if they answered the phone and they knew the amount of the jackpot, they won it, and if they didn't, it went up by a whopping $5. So the jackpots were, like $300-400. Not huge money, even though that was pretty big money back in those days when I was a kid. But you don't really care about all that. Just to say that this movie used to show up quite a bit on that afternoon movie. And I remember seeing this probably, I saw this 3 or 4, 5 times maybe, talking about when I was 10, 11, 12, 13. It used to come on quite a bit. So I probably saw it first time when I was about 10 or so. And I really liked it, even though it wasn't really a typical kids film. It was I guess a teenage or a grown-up film. But basically, Hayley Mills and this guy get married, and they move in. They're kind of working class English family in a little English town, and so they have to move in with her parents or his parents or somebody, one of their parents. So there's all this family crammed into the house, so they never get any time alone, and they never get a chance to consummate the marriage, I guess, because comic interruptions and other interruptions keep them from doing that. And then word gets out around the family and the people in the neighborhood that this hadn't happened, and it leads to all sorts of drama and comedy and so forth. And it's just a kind of a English kitchen sink little movie. It's really a nice movie. I like it a lot. It's not, I wouldn't say it's not great. It's not 400 Blows, Casablanca, Godfather classic type quality, but it's a good movie. And I used to like watching this when I was a kid, and I went looking for it when it later on, when VCRs, videotape and stuff showed up. And I don't know if this either never came out on video, I never could find it, and I kicked myself because it came out on DVD 2 or 3 years ago, and I went put it on my wish list on Amazon, meant to buy it, and I never got around to it, and now they've cut it out again, and there's not even any used copies floating around that I've been able to find. So I'd really like to see this again, because like I said, I liked it a lot when I was a kid. Last time I saw it I was probably 13, 14 maybe, and it'd be nice to see if it still holds up from what I remember. Anyway, Hayley Mills, I had a huge crush on Hayley Mills from a young age. I remember seeing her in The Parent Trap and Pollyanna and some of her kid roles, which was okay because I was a little kid at the time too. So, and then this is her first adult role, I guess. Even she was, this came out in '66, but I always had a huge crush on Hayley Mills. But so I knew Paul McCartney had done the soundtrack to this. The Bolting brothers are the people who produced the movie, and they approached Paul about doing the soundtrack in '66. And after the Beatles did their final tour of America in August, he got home and started working on this. George Martin helped him a lot. So the album, like I said, was something I thought I was glad to finally get it. I had seen it for sale. I had never seen a physical copy, but I'd seen listings of it for sale before. But I went to the record store, Doc's record store, last week, and there it was. And I thought, hey, I've wanted that forever, so I went ahead and bought it. So I don't think Paul, it's questionable whether Paul actually plays on these albums. Much like his later classical albums that he did in the 90s and the 2000s, I don't think he really plays on any of those things. He might have written the music and conducted the orchestra and produced the thing, but I don't think he actually plays. But Wikipedia, which, however reliable that is, has him listed as bass, piano, and vocals on this album, which is kind of funny because there are no vocals on this record. And this book that I got several years ago is 8 Arms to Hold You. It's all about the Beatles solo records. And I don't know if that's, I think this is out of print now too, but and it lists all their solo work. And this says that he doesn't actually play on anything, that George Martin brought in orchestras and other musicians, but that Paul came up with the melodies for the 2 songs. And that's the other thing that the well, let's look at the record. I guess we've seen the cover, Hayley Mills, front and back. Here is the it's on London Records. I don't know why it's on London Records and not on Parlophone or Capitol, but I guess it's kind of like the Hard Day's Night soundtrack being on the United Artists label in America. One of those special one-off deals because it was a movie soundtrack. The sleeve has showed this the other day when my new pickups has some other albums available from London. There's Will Glaw, the big polka band hits. I really need to get back to Doc's and see if they have that. And there's the record, basically, on the London label, stereo version. Thought I said the other day that it was mono, but it's actually stereo. This is a USA pressing, and there's no track listing on the label. It just says The Family Way original soundtrack from the film, music composed by Paul McCartney, made in the USA, and there are 13 tracks on this record. Kind of hard to tell sometimes where one ends and the other begins. And this is, in one way, like my favorite album of all time, the Beatles' second album. Not that it's anywhere near as good as that album or in that caliber of music, but this whole album, front to back, is a whopping 24 minutes long. Some of the songs on here, some of the tracks on here are only probably 30 seconds or so. Some of them are more like a couple of minutes. So, and that's the thing, the two songs that he composed, or pieces of music, I don't know if they're songs, are Love in the Open Air and Theme from a Family Way, both of which McCartney composed, supposedly. I don't know, I mean, I kind of wonder how much George Martin helped him out with this stuff. But, you know, he wrote Eleanor Rigby and so forth, so he probably came up with the melodies. So there's only two songs, and the two songs are done over and over on the album, which sounds really boring because you've got an album with, you know, 13 tracks and it's just two songs over and over. And I thought it would just be the same piece of music, same two pieces of music over and over. And it is, but it's done in a different style. Each track is done in a different, same melody or theme, or the two songs, but they're done in a different style. And it's actually interesting enough to be worthwhile. So I was very pleased when I put it on, because like I said, I thought, I got it, I've wanted this forever, I'm going to put it on and listen to it. This probably, you know, probably never listen to this thing again, but it's nice. Now, the one thing about it is it's sort of classical music, or most of it is, so it depends on how you feel about classical music. If you don't have any interest, or it's not your thing at all, I don't know that you would have much interest in this. And I'm not saying this is a great lost classic McCartney album to run out and try to track it down and buy it, and it's probably not something that I'm going to listen to on any type of regular basis, but I think it's something that I will pull out and listen to from time to time, because I played it several times. I played it that first time just to hear it, really liked it, and I played it a few times otherwise because I thought it'd be fun to do a review about it, because this is one of those albums that people never talk about or review. You just hear that, oh, Paul McCartney did the soundtrack to The Family Way, and it's kind of like those weird John Lennon albums, or Electronic Sounds by George Harrison. They get mentioned in passing, and they don't get much notice past that, which in the case of the Lennon and the Harrison albums, those are goofy, weird, and fun to have if you're completist, but they're not good. They're not listenable. So that's probably why on that. This one is actually pretty good. So I'm going to go through the tracks, and like I said, it's hard to tell where one track ends and the other begins, because they kind of seeg or blend into each other. I've got written down here 14 tracks, even though there's only 13, so somewhere I messed up, and it was part of a in one style of music that shifted into another through the track. So there's not they're listed, nothing on the label listing tracks, but in this book they just list them as track 1, etc., etc., and it's Q1, Q2 for the movie. Most of this is in the movie, this music. It's been so long since I've seen the movie that I kind of remember some of this music when I heard it, but not all of it. And I think there's some tracks on here that didn't make it into the movie. The album, like I said, came out January of '67. Paul and Jane Asher and George Martin attended the premiere of the film, which I think was December of '66. The album won an Ivor Novello Award for Best Soundtrack. Ivor Novello is a guy who was born in Cardiff, which is in Wales. He was a music composer, writer, I don't know what, but the Ivor Novello Award's been given away since 1955 for songwriting and composing and other categories like that, and Paul won in, I guess, '66 or '67 for this album. The album had a 45 released, which I would like to have, but don't have. I think it's just one of the tracks from the album. I think the flip side is something that's not on the album, but it's just another variation of one of the two tracks. And it was released on CD later in the '90s with some bonus tracks that weren't on the original album. I read all this stuff today to do a little background research. Uh, really love this film, and I wish they'd put it back out on DVD again because I'd like to see it. But so track by track, and then we'll go back through this pretty quick. The opening track is sort of and I've written some notes here. So grand symphonic sounds like a movie opening theme, or it sounds like a church wedding scene, which makes sense because Hayley Mills and the lucky guy there, whatever his name is, get married. Track 2 is kind of a pastoral vibe, kind of like you're looking over the fields and the valleys of this quaint little English town. And then in the middle of the song, the music kind of takes you into one of the houses in the town, or close up of one of the people in the town is kind of the feel that I get. So it works there as sort of movie and mood and classical music. Track 3, more upbeat and celebratory. It kind of goes into an action James Bond film music mode, and it's got some nice kind of upbeat jazz drumming. Nice. Side 4 is more meditative or more mournful. You got strings, kind of strings with a flute or piccolo playing underneath them, and then kind of contrasted with a deep resonant cello, and then a more flute comes back in for a more thoughtful sort of feel to the song. 5 is a jazzy, great big picture production sound to it. And again, like I said, these are just these two songs, the same two songs over and over, but done in different styles and modes and tempos and takes. So 6 is kind of a Spanish guitar playing along with the orchestra, and you've got, I don't know, I'm not a music major expert, but it sounds like it's either a trumpet or a French horn playing in the back. And then mid-song it goes into sort of a sleepy, dreamy tempo pace feel, and kind of goes back to the start of the song again. This album, if you're a fan of Pink Floyd, Adam Hart Mother, the Adam Hart Mother Suite, side 1, whole side of the album, some of this, it's not like they copied Paul McCartney 4 or 5 years later. I'm not saying that, but I mean, it sort of feels like that kind of, some of these pieces on here have that same sort of feel or mood or vibe to them. So you might enjoy that if you enjoy the Adam Hart Mother Suite, is all I'm saying there. It's kind of a good Sunday morning or maybe a good late night record. To one of them you can sit there and pay attention to it and listen to it, or it's one of them that you can have on when you're doing stuff around the house type feel. So track 7 is kind of a dance beat, a little bit like a travelogue feel, like you're in a movie and there's some motion, a car driving somewhere or showing different scenes of different parts of a city or something. So yeah. Side 2 opens with a kind of back to the James Bond and a 60s rockin' sort of Batman theme. Doesn't sound like the Batman theme, but it's got that same sort of propulsion and energy and action. It's got drums and keyboard and guitar with the middle section of the violins coming in. It's nice. So track number 2, kind of like we're back in church again for the wedding. You got the pipe organ opens things up with the cello strings. It's got kind of a marching band beat. It goes into whole song goes into this regal, grand feeling. Kind of, you expect Queen Elizabeth to come walking out into the procession into the church or something type feel to it. Third track is a mod, Carnaby Street, swinging London mod, funky 1966 groove. You got a Hammond organ and a guitar, a little bit soulful, sounds a little bit like the Bar-Kays or Booker T and the MGs kind of groove to it. 4 is film music interlude sound. Is kind of a cool jazz beat to it, and it's short. The thing's only like 20 seconds, but it's a neat little interlude. Um, 5 is sort of a sad, mournful string version, and then it morphs into sort of you're in a well-appointed country English manor drawing room, sort of a chamber music type feel. Um, 6 song is a flamenco guitar with background of builds into a kind of a grandeur, bigger and bigger build up, and then back to the flamenco guitar sound. Not a great track. It sort of sounds like it's background music if you've ever been at a Chinese buffet and they've got the background music playing, or an Italian restaurant. It's sort of random. Um, and then the album ends with kind of a kick out, well, for classical music, kick out the jams, knees up, sort of a military cadence finale, or something that wouldn't be out of place in a football stadium as the team's running out on the field. And it's also got a bit of a Western music motif running underneath that in the middle, especially. So it's a really nice ending. So, how well this album and Paul's later classical things, Standing Stone and that Eka, however you say that, and Ocean's Kingdom, how well those things stack up against actual classical music, or people that train forever to play classical music. I don't know. I think I've got 2 classical music records in my collection, and occasionally I'll turn on the classical music station on the car radio. Sometimes in winter when I'm driving home from work on a cold night or something, I'll listen to it for a bit. I enjoy some of it. Some of it sounds really good, and some of it sounds kind of samey, and some of it sounds pretty boring. And I remember some of it from college days of, fine arts and humanities classes and stuff. And some of that stuff's really good, but it's not a music that I know well enough to talk about that intelligently. And so, but yeah, this album, like I said, I didn't expect anything going in, and it turned out to be pretty nice, neat little thing, and not something I'm going to play probably not often, but once in a while I'm going to pull it out and play it. It's a fun, and it's a tuneful little thing. So scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to go, I don't know, I think I'll give this a solid 7. It's actually pretty good. So there you go, The Family Way, 1966. Hayley Mills, Paul McCartney. Hoping this comes out on DVD sometime. I'd like to see the movie again, and I'm happy to finally have the album after having wanted it for decades, really.